What was your favorite moment being on the Tonight Show? Do you have one in specific?
Yeah,
if
you know,
remember?
well, when we
with him?
started, my group of comics in the 70s and 80s,
Right.
still, that was the dream, you know, to get on the Johnny Carson show. Didn't matter what other shows you did. That was the gold standard. And that was the only one that people cared about. You know, my parents were not particularly proud of having a son who was a comedian until, oh, he's on the Johnny Carson show. Well,
Look at that.
that's a Harvard
Forget
grad.
being a doctor now.
No, yeah, that's a Harvard education.
Right.
So my first time was certainly memorable, and that feels like you break through, and like now you're in show business. But he was really very welcoming to me, and I from like '86 to '89 or '90, he had me on pretty regularly, and I wouldn't do stand up. I would sit down at the couch, and I had stuff prepared. But now it became like a two-handed, like it was like playing tennis, and so I would have the material, and he'd set me up. And that's when I got to see firsthand how great he was, specifically with that. For a comic, and with all his guests, but for comics, he knew how to set you up. He knew when to step in, when to stay back. He knew if something wasn't going well, he would change the subject. He'd move it along. And sometimes, there were a couple of times where I was trying something that didn't work, and he was just looking at me like, go ahead, babe, you started this. It's like, and that became, it was like, you know, he was great at in his monologue. When a joke missed, it was actually funnier than a good joke.
Right.
So a few times that I remember one time I tried sort of this novelty piece. I was doing a movie and the joke was, well, I don't have a clip, but I have some pictures here, and I drew little stick figures, and I was walking him through the movie as if it was a clip. It was a cute idea, but about 10 seconds in, we're both thinking, oh, this is not working at all. And he's just, you know, so the joke became, go ahead. You wanted to try this, knucklehead? Let's do it. And so the times that I had interactions and responses from him were just really validating because he was the king.
Well, he was a great listener as well. I mean, doing this show every day and interviewing as many people as I'm fortunate to interview, now we're in our 4th year, I always try to study interviewers. Yeah. And the toughest thing is listening. He always seemed to listen. And he always had no problem being the laugh track for somebody, like making him laugh.
He was never competitive. He wanted you to score.
Right.
He wanted comics to score. But what's really interesting about this show, because there's certainly our generation, anything 40 and up, who remember Johnny and enjoying that. But there are 20-year-olds who don't know who he was, which is fine because it has nothing to do. You don't need to know Johnny. This is a show about, like any other show, it's about real people. And Johnny is in the air, and he's sort of the background. But the extra bonus is, for those people who didn't know Johnny, that when they leave the show, they'll go, oh.
There he is.
There he is. I get it.
For more Rich Eisen Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Rich Eisen Show app.